You can have your
Main event of the evening.
ready to race to you.
These days are
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today, we will be discussing the episode Testing 1-2 from Garry Marshall's first TV show, Hey Landlord.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in Testing 1-2.
Woody Banner, the landlord of a New York brownstone, and his best friend Chuck are going to act as hosts for a photography exhibition being held by tenant Jack Ellenhorn on Saturday. The only problem is that to host, they need to rent tuxedos, and they don't have any money. Chuck has the solution, an ad in the medical journal offering to pay human test subjects for experiments at the university. Woody hates the idea of being a guinea pig.
You know, most people don't give their bodies to science till they're through with them. I'm not through with mine.
But Jack visits to express his anxiety over the upcoming exhibition, and how the only comfort he has is knowing that Woody and Chuck will be there. He gets them to promise they'll be there in tuxedos.
Believe me, the first time in my life I'll be glad to see you, Joe. I mean it.
Woody and Chuck visit the university, where they're sent to different experiments. Woody talks to Dr. Wiggleby, who is operating an experiment on human nutrition. He castigates Woody for his cheeseburger and malt lunch.
On a scale from 1 to 100, the cheeseburger rates 6, a malt 2.
That makes 8.
Wonderful! Good at adding, bad at eating.
Then starts eating a banana peel. The experiment will involve the original source of all nutrition, dirt. Woody isn't terribly happy hearing that he'll be eating dirt, even as Wiggleby claims that they use a variety of nuts and twigs for seasoning.
We use a variety of nuts and twigs and leaves. Listen, I set a nice table.
Meanwhile, Chuck gets Dr. Sandor, an expert on sleep, who hypothesizes that humans are better off using sleep in small amounts.
But I get 8 hours a night.
Why does everybody say 8 hours? 8 hours that's a myth, 8 hours sleep.
So, the experiment involves staying awake for 48 hours on just 80 minutes of sleep, broken up in smaller units. After all, Dr. Sandor only sleeps 40 minutes, and his wife for only 30. Chuck asks, what about his children, and learns that they don't have any. Downstairs, Chuck and Woody complain about their respective experiments. Woody wants to try something else to get the money, like selling blood, but Chuck says they have no more blood to sell.
Last night a bat flew into our room, took one look at us, flew right back out.
They sign their contracts with the university, only to learn too late that the experiments start on Thursday and end on Saturday, right before Jack's exhibition. Thursday arrives. Chuck begins the sleep experiments alongside 2 other men, sequestered in a room full of board games and exciting books like Ulysses and the Hardy Boys, and a motion picture projector with films like The Pit and the Pendulum, and Psycho, and various army training videos.
The main thing is do anything you want, but don't fall asleep.
They also have bracelets that will shock them if any of them fall asleep. Woody, meanwhile, is sent to a room to snack on pineapple stems, alongside a disheveled man who plans to spend his money on alcohol, and Harold, a well-dressed, snobby young man who is just really into eating dirt.
See, I love dirt.
You look it.
I also like herbs and roots and barks and trees.
Shut up, you little seed freak.
They're frisked to make sure none of them have food from outside, then left alone. Back in the sleep experiment, Chuck decides he and his fellow guinea pigs will play Power, the board game of international diplomacy, in which the goal is to attain the complete military enslavement of Western Europe. Unfortunately for the 3 of them, there are a lot of rules.
This game looks very complicated.
No, it's a very simple game. The idea is to attain the complete military enslavement of Western Europe.
Back in the diet experiment, Harold is having a wonderful time. Woody is not, and neither is the disheveled man, who is trying to maintain focus on the wine he'll buy with the money.
Hey, I know a cooking wine for 16 cents. I want 16 cents into $25.
An assistant in the experiment offers a chocolate bunny if they bribe him, which Woody tries to take him up on before Wiggleby intervenes and kicks the assistant out. Things aren't going much better in the sleep experiment, where Chuck has just gotten to the rules on war trials. One experimentee has a sobbing breakdown and tries to find someplace no one will see him to lie down, but is, of course, shocked. Chuck suggests they play the Happy Lollipop instead, and then Sandor gives them their first chance to sleep for 1 minute. Saturday night arrives. Jack's assistant has brought Woody and Chuck their tuxes. Chuck has fallen asleep cuddling a statue, and Woody begs Jack's assistant for a bologna sandwich.
Well, say, Tim, I don't suppose you have a bologna sandwich on you?
No, gee, I'm sorry, Woody, I don't.
The two get their suits on and arrive at the gallery. Chuck falls asleep leaning against a wall, and Woody ends up grabbing Jack's pills because he thought they were mints. On the bright side, Jack meets oil man Thomas Archibald, who is interested in hiring him to photograph his ranch. He is not put off by Woody asking him about all the stakes on his ranch.
I'm Thomas Archibald.
The oil man?
Well, I do have a number of wells on my ranch.
Yeah, you got food on your ranch?
I beg your pardon.
Answer my question, Woody, juicy steaks.
Well,
huh?
Woody, I wouldn't...
Wait a minute, Woody, got a lot of ducks and eggs.
but Chuck passing out on him leaves him less enthused. Woody tries to grab a lollipop away from a boy, and Jack stops him, since the buffet has arrived. Unfortunately for everyone, the cover is pulled off the table to reveal that Chuck has fallen asleep on it.
There's a dead man in the food!
Afterwards, Thomas Archibald tells Jack that usually these things are incredibly boring, so he's glad this one had some humor. He reminds him to bring a wide-angle lens with him to Texas. And Woody and Chuck have even recovered, thanks to the attention of two beautiful women.
Hi, Jack, baby, love you, man. If it isn't. Hi, Mr. Ellenhorn, you were never better. I'm his landlord.
Thank you, Peter. That was Hey Landlord, testing 1, 2. It first aired back on Sunday, March 26, 1967 on NBC. It followed Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. The episode that night was Man on Wheels, which tells the story of how the wheel was invented and how wheels have been used through history. CBS aired The Ed Sullivan Show. Ed's guests that night included the Dave Clark Five, the Muppets, and Eddie Albert and Pat Buttram from Green Acres. And ABC aired the 1953 biblical epic, The Robe, starring Richard Burton as a Roman military official who is ordered to crucify Jesus, but has a crisis of conscience. Aww. This was the lead-in to the 1967 Tony Awards, where Cabaret was named Best Musical. So, Peter, do any of those shows appeal to you? What would you have watched had you been around that night?
I think that I would have watched The Muppets with Eddie Albert and Pat Buttram, and then I would have watched the Tony Awards.
I probably would have watched the same thing. I don't think I would have watched Hey Landlord.
And the wheels don't appeal to you?
If you want to hear Walt Disney himself say the word wheels about 100 times, that was the episode for you.
Wheels, wheels, wheels and more wheels.
Hey Landlord was the first original series created by Garry Marshall and his writing partner, Marshall-Belson. Although a failure in the ratings, often ranked near the bottom of the Nielsen's, it ran for a full season of 31 episodes from September 1966 to April 1967.
Hey Landlord was 99th in the ratings, but it lasted a whole year. We had like 32 episodes. I can't remember, but it was over 30 episodes of this show. A bomb!
Marshall said that this series taught him valuable lessons that he applied to his other shows. Peter, do you see this as a predecessor to Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley? Can you see the origins of those shows in Hey Landlord?
I think so. You can definitely see the influence on The Odd Couple and Laverne and Shirley specifically. Woody and Chuck are a pretty classic buddy duo, at least in this episode. The fact that this episode was so easily adapted into an episode of Laverne and Shirley definitely speaks to that.
I also think that the characters of Ralph and Potsy are a little bit inspired by Hey Landlord, especially when Ralph and Potsy get their own very sloppy bachelor apartment that they're living in. That seems a little similar to Hey Landlord. Testing 1, 2 was directed by John Rich.
Oh, that's rich.
John was an Emmy-winning director from Rockaway Beach, New York. He worked from the 1950s to the 1990s on such classic TV shows as
The Dick Van Dyke Show, MacGyver, Murphy Brown, The Twilight Zone, All in the Family, Bonanza, Gunsmoke, Newhart, and many more.
John's movies include the Elvis Presley vehicles Roustabout and Easy Come, Easy Go. He died at the age of 86 in 2012. Once you start seeing John Rich's name, you'll see it all the time.
He had a rich career.
Testing 1, 2 was written by Jack Winter. Jack was a New York screenwriter who worked mostly in the 1960s and 70s. His credits include
The Dick Van Dyke Show, That Girl, The Monkees, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, The Odd Couple, and Laverne and Shirley.
All the shows you would expect. He also directed episodes of The Odd Couple and Laverne and Shirley. He was later credited as a consultant on Penny Marshall's film Big.
You're a consultant.
Jack died in 2006. He was 64. The creative consultant on Hey Landlord was the legendary Sheldon Leonard. It's difficult to summarize Sheldon's career since he worked in so many capacities, both in front of and behind the camera. In addition to being a busy character actor, he was an extremely successful sitcom producer with credits like The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Danny Thomas Show, and The Andy Griffith Show. Sheldon lived to be 89. He died in 1997. Peter, if I said the name Sheldon Leonard, do you have any strong associations with that name?
Yeah, he was Nick the bartender in It's a Wonderful Life.
Out you two pixies go, through the door or out the window.
As for our main cast, I'll start with our series regulars. We have Will Hutchins as Woody Banner.
What would you say if we came wearing red pants with gold tuxedo jackets that say Toon Timers on the back?
Will was a Los Angeles actor who worked steadily in television and film in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and sporadically after that. Before this show, he was the lead on a Western series called Sugarfoot from 1957 to 1961.
Guess you're Billy the Kid. I guess you've heard of me. Oh, sure. Everybody's heard of you.
After Hey Landlord, he played Dagwood on a Blondie sitcom that ran from 1968 to 1969.
You know these plans I've been working on for the past 2 weeks for that new office building?
You finished them.
Right. And today...
Today you present them to Mr. Dithers.
Right.
Will also turned up on Perry Mason, Gunsmoke, The Streets of San Francisco, and The Alfred Hitchcock Hour. His movies include The Shooting, No Time for Sergeants, and the infamous Roar. Will died in 2025. He was 94. Peter, what did you think of Will Hutchins as Woody Banner?
Of our two leads, he's more of the well-intentioned straight man in a sense, who is nevertheless thrown into a situation where he is stripped of his dignity and ultimately makes a fool of himself. I would say that Will Hutchins plays this role very well. I think that he's very good at projecting good-heartedness, and that makes Will an appealing lead. I will say that I feel like the fact that I don't know Woody super well as a character, I think that means I didn't find the situation quite as funny as I could have. The juxtaposition is what is funny. Like, the fact that he's driven absolutely mad with hunger is what is funny. I did watch the Laverne and Shirley episode that is a remake of this episode, just so I could have a good point of comparison. A big part of why I think that episode works a bit better is because it's so funny seeing Shirley, who is straight-laced and ambitious and really wants to move further in the world, seeing her go insane over a cracker that someone dropped on the floor, even as she's trying to impress these people. That's funny.
While I was watching this episode, I had to wonder why it didn't hit as hard as the Laverne and Shirley remake. And I think it's because of the two main characters. If you watch a lot of really classic sitcoms, the characters really pop off the screen. And what makes the situation funny in Guinea Pigs, the Laverne and Shirley episode, is that it's Laverne and Shirley going through it. And somehow seeing Woody and Chuck going through the same thing isn't quite as funny because we don't really care that much about what happens to Woody or to Chuck. And I have to wonder if it's because of the way the characters are written or because of the way the characters are acted. I don't know if Will Hutchins is really funny as an actor. He was mostly known as a Western actor before this, and he appeared in a lot of dramas after it. So I don't know that he was ever going to make it as a huge comedy star. I was trying to think of how funny this episode would have been if, let's say, Ralph Cramden and Ed Norton had been going through the same thing. I think Ralph and Ed would have been getting big laughs from the studio audience.
Wait a minute. Just give me a little time to drink this whole thing in. Like seeing Boulder Dam for the first time.
If Ralph Cramden was trying to steal a lollipop from a little boy, it would be hilarious.
We also have Sandy Barron as Chuck Hookstratton.
It is obvious now that if we don't get that money and help that man, we're rats, okay? Now, is it going to be rats or guinea pigs? Chickens.
Sandy was a Brooklyn-born comedian and character actor best known to modern audiences as Jack Klompus on Seinfeld.
What do you think? I've never ridden in a Cadillac before? Believe me, I have ridden in a Cadillac hundreds of times.
He began his career as a Borscht Belt comedian in the Catskills before getting into TV and film. He worked from the 1960s to the 1990s. You could have seen him in such films as
The Grifters, Sid and Nancy, Targets, Leprechaun 2, and The Out-of-Towners.
He was also a regular on the satirical comedy show That Was the Week That Was. Sandy was a heavy smoker and died at the age of 64 in 2001. Peter, any thoughts on Sandy Barron as Chuck Hookstratton?
Chuck and their dynamic, he's the schemer, he's the fast talker, he's the one who talks Woody into volunteering as human test subjects. He does a better job with the comedy than I would say Will Hutchins does. My favorite joke from this episode that is not in Guinea Pigs is just him talking about Power, the Risk stand-in. I love his describing it as the game of international diplomacy and then listing all the horrifying war crimes you can commit in it.
That's a funny bit. Again, I don't know if the Chuck Hookstratton character hits really hard. I watched some of Sandy Barron's stand-up from this era, and he's kind of a cerebral, satirical comedian in the Mort Sahl mode of stand-up comedy, and he's a little bit emotionally detached. He's not a wild comedic character in this the way I think he should be. A lot of Sandy Barron's personality in his later years came from his really deep, gravelly voice, which came from, unfortunately, years of smoking. We also have Michael Constantine as Jack Ellenhorn.
You were talking. What? Talking. Something's wrong. Don't tell me something's wrong. I don't want to hear it.
Michael was a character actor from Reading, Pennsylvania, who was in dozens of films and TV shows from the late 1950s to the 2000s. His most famous character was Gus in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, a role that he reprised in the sequel and the TV show. You could have seen Michael on
The Twilight Zone, Law and Order, The Odd Couple, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, MacGyver, Airwolf, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and many more.
His movies include The Hustler and Thinner. Michael died in 2021. He was 94. Peter, any thoughts on Michael Constantine as Jack Ellenhorn?
I really liked the very Borscht Belt, almost Fozzie Bear jokes he had in the opening, where he's describing how the gallery is ruining his intentions for his photographs.
You know my picture of the reclining nude? They hung it so she's standing up.
Aside from that, I was kind of confused by why he wanted Woody and Chuck to be hosts at the exhibition, because one, do photography exhibitions usually have hosts? And two, it's kind of implied throughout this episode, which maybe I would know better if I had seen more of the show, that he doesn't really like Woody and Chuck. He thinks they're annoying and they mess things up. So I don't really know why he wants them specifically to be the hosts.
Well, he is a nervous wreck, and I guess the thinking is that he wants two people there that he knows. Somehow that will calm him down during this high-tension show that he's about to go through. I don't know. Obviously, he wants them there because they're the main characters on this sitcom, and they have to be involved in this somehow. What I appreciated is that Michael Constantine is the one actor who's really getting into the swing of things comedically. He's playing this part pretty big. In fact, some of his speech cadences reminded me a little bit of how Garry Marshall himself talks when Garry would get excited about something.
Michael Constantine also has this great way of opening his eyes really wide, so he just looks shocked by everything. It's great.
We also have Pamela Rogers as Teresa Timothy Morgan.
Oh, Mr. Ellenhorn, it was a very exciting night. Your show was a very big success.
Pamela is a retired actress from Houston, Texas, who appeared in a number of films and television shows in the late 1960s and early 70s, then suddenly retired and never acted again. I will always remember her for the 1968 movie The Big Cube with Lana Turner, but she was also a regular performer on Laugh-In and even appeared in the spin-off movie The Maltese Bippy. She also turned up on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and The Beverly Hillbillies. Her movies include Dr. Goldfoot and The Bikini Machine. Peter, any thoughts on Pamela Rogers as Timothy Morgan?
She doesn't get a lot to do in this episode. This is not a big episode for her. She's there to be Jack's assistant, I guess.
Pamela's job on the show in other episodes is basically just to be pretty and often be dressed in scanty outfits. That's kind of what she does on Laugh-In and what she did in The Maltese Bippy.
It's a living.
We also have some interesting guest stars in this. A very young Rob Reiner and Richard Dreyfuss appear as test subjects. Both were near the beginning of their long careers. Before breaking through with his role on All in the Family, Rob Reiner guested on a number of TV shows, including
Batman, Gomer Pyle, The Andy Griffith Show, and The Beverly Hillbillies.
He also appeared in a couple of films directed by his father, Carl Reiner, Enter Laughing and Where's Papa. He appeared as various characters in several episodes of Hey Landlord, so it looks like Garry Marshall was throwing some work his way. What did you think of Rob Reiner in this episode?
He has a very fun moment where he just absolutely shatters during the sleep experiment as Chuck is reading the rules to power.
I can't stand it anymore. Your crazy, boring voice is putting me to sleep.
That is absolutely one of the comedic highlights of the episode, and one that doesn't show up in Guinea Pigs. Sadly, his character does not get a name. He's just Big Guy, according to the other guy in the sleep experiment.
Would you have seen comedic potential in Rob as a character actor in this episode?
Definitely, yeah. His character isn't as quirky as the ones in the food experiment, but that moment, very memorable, and he plays it fantastically.
I was pretty impressed with Rob here, and I had recently been watching the movies of Carl Reiner, and I saw him in Where's Papa. He is really funny in Where's Papa. He only has one big scene in that movie, but he steals it.
How the hell can you get a suntan in a full dress uniform?
Richard Dreyfuss also guested on a lot of classic 60s series. You can see him in episodes of
Bewitched, Gidget, The Big Valley, Peyton Place, Ben Casey, and That Girl.
He kept doing bit parts in TV and film until his breakthrough with American Graffiti in 1973.
I just saw a vision. I saw a goddess. Come on, you gotta catch up to her.
Peter, what did you think of Richard Dreyfuss in this episode?
Harold is one of the most fun characters in this episode. He's this snobby fashion plate who just really likes eating dirt. He's here for the dirt. He's having the time of his life eating dirt. And it makes for a very fun contrast with Woody and the coded homeless man whose portrayal kind of made me uncomfortable, but I understand what they were going for, but it still kind of made me uncomfortable. They are just in this for the money, but not Harold. If anything, Harold probably would do this even for free.
He probably would. I love to see Richard Dreyfuss play pretentious, snobby characters. He's so funny at doing that. He doesn't always play that kind of character, but he's really good at playing that kind of character, and he would do that for decades. So I guess we see the nicer side of his personality in American Graffiti in a few years, but it's funny that it took him quite a while before he broke through. So he was doing these TV guest parts for quite a long time. We have a couple of mad scientist type characters. I'll start with David Ketchum as Dr. Sandor.
Excuse me, I was just reading my book and I dozed off. I'm sorry.
We have talked about Dave Ketchum many times on this podcast because he was a frequent writer and guest star on Happy Days. He even had a recurring role on Happy Days as Donald Hedges, an obnoxious member of the Leopard Lodge. David frequently worked with Garry Marshall and Jerry Paris over the course of a long career. He died in 2025. Peter, did you recognize Dave Ketchum in this episode?
Yes, and I was very happy to do so. He is a lot of fun in this episode. I love the gag that both of the scientists who are running these experiments seem to basically be doing them as justification for their own weird fixations.
That's something I enjoyed as well. Dave Ketchum was a real pro, so obviously they kept using him because they always knew he would be good, and he was always funny on Happy Days as well. And we can't forget Larry D. Mann as Dr. Wriggleby.
What we want to do is test your reaction to the original source of nutrition.
What's that? Dirt.
Larry was a Canadian character actor who appeared in dozens of films and TV shows from the 50s to the 90s. You could have seen him in such classic movies as
Bullet, The Sting, In the Heat of the Night, and Robin and the Seven Hoods.
He also turned up on many classic shows.
Columbo, MacGyver, Bewitched, The Dukes of Hazzard, Get Smart, Hill Street Blues, Green Acres, and many more.
He was also a disc jockey and voice actor, and even played the Tin Man on a 1960s Wizard of Oz cartoon series.
No more interviews, gentlemen. Champ Sacco is out for the day.
Larry died in 2014 at the age of 91. Any thoughts on Larry D. Mann as Dr. Wriggleby?
Much like with Dave Ketchum, he is a lot of fun. And something that I noticed when comparing this to Guinea Pigs is that I think the mad scientists in this one get longer scenes. The respective big jokes that they get, namely eating the banana peel and my wife and I don't have any children, those are the ones that also show up in Guinea Pigs. But I feel like we do spend more time with these characters in this episode, and I suspect that they are doing that in part to compensate for the shortcomings of our leads.
That's what I think, too. I think Dr. Sandor and Dr. Wriggleby are given more lines here because they are wackier, funnier characters than Woody and Chuck. As for the music on this show, it's by Quincy Jones. Quincy was a multi-talented composer, musician, bandleader, record producer, and entertainment industry executive from Chicago, whose career lasted from the 1950s to the 2020s. He originally established himself as a major figure in the jazz world, but soon became one of the top producers in pop and R&B as well, working with artists from Leslie Gore to Michael Jackson. He was also a prolific TV and film composer. His best-known TV themes include Sanford and Son and Ironside. He also did the music for the TV miniseries Roots. His movies include In Cold Blood and The Wiz. Quincy died at the age of 91 in 2024. Peter, any thoughts on some of the music that we hear in this episode?
It's nicely jazzy. It's memorable without being super intrusive. I wouldn't say it's Jones's best work, but you can definitely tell that it is him.
It has that hip 60s jazz feel, probably the kind of music that Quincy was just making at that time. One thing I appreciated, I watched a few more episodes, and there are a few different versions of the theme song. He'll do like little variations on the theme song that change from episode to episode. As for our cultural and historical references, if the plot of this episode seems familiar, it was remade as a classic episode of Laverne and Shirley called Guinea Pigs, which aired as part of the second season in January 1977.
Wake up, or they're gonna throw us out of here. Come on, there's a wall right here. Oh, I love this wall.
and Jack Winter is credited as the screenwriter for that one as well. Because Hey Landlord was so little seen, Garry used ideas from it for both Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. Do you think that's fair game? Do you think if your show didn't get seen by a lot of people, it's fair to just use the ideas for other shows?
Absolutely. Work smarter, not harder. They credited the original screenwriter. I assume he was compensated, so yeah.
Chuck says this is not Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory.
I don't like the looks of this whole place. Wait, this is not Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory. This is a well-known university.
Since Mary Shelley's 1818 novel Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus is deliberately vague in its description of the scientist's methods, the definitive version of the lab is the one seen in the 1931 Universal film with props designed by electrician Kenneth Strickfaden.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Yes, and he did not sew his creature together out of corpse parts in the book.
Dr. Wriggleby throws away the banana and eats the peel. This may seem like a silly thing to do, but banana peels are a source of fiber, potassium, and antioxidants.
Yeah, but are they tasty?
I wouldn't guess so, but I think Dr. Wriggleby has evolved to a point where he doesn't really respond to the taste of foods anymore. He is just interested in the nutritional value of them, so his taste buds have been rewired, I think, a bit.
He does describe the peel as a goodie, so I think he's just a freak. Good for him.
Dr. Sandor decries the myth of people needing 8 hours of sleep a night and says that people should sleep in short bursts instead.
Now, in our experiment, you'll stay awake for 48 hours on just 80 minutes sleep.
Although exaggerated for comic effect in this episode, the practice is called polyphasic sleep. Most experts say that it is detrimental to health and that 7 to 9 hours of continuous sleep a night is best. Have you ever heard from people who advocate for polyphasic sleep? I hear from them occasionally.
I have not heard from them. I have heard of people who say that you only need like 4 total hours of sleep, but I always assume that they mean altogether.
Woody suggests selling blood.
Isn't there some other way we could get the money to rent the tuxes? We could sell more blood.
This practice was still fairly common in the 1960s, but it was phased out in the 1970s and is virtually unheard of today. I've never heard of anyone doing that in real life. I've only ever seen people do that in sitcoms and movies. What is your experience with people selling blood?
I've heard of people donating blood, but not selling it. I have donated blood a couple of times, but it always ends up making me sick, so I don't do it very often.
I know Bart Simpson sold his blood as late as the 1990s.
$12? Hey, I can bleed.
But I don't think he could really do that.
Many things on The Simpsons are harkening back to stuff from when the people who make The Simpsons were children. That's why Bart Simpson loves a TV clown, which was not a thing by the 90s, so...
The secretary says that doctors never work on Wednesdays. While this practice is not universal, many doctors do take Wednesdays off to break up the work week and give themselves time to review lab tests, call patients, and handle paperwork. Now, Peter, were you familiar with jokes about doctors not working on Wednesdays?
I was not, no.
Do you know what the joke used to always be? What people used to joke that they were doing on Wednesdays?
Golfing?
Yep. So that was why you couldn't get a spot on the golf course on Wednesdays because they were always golfing. According to real doctors, they say that isn't true.
I'm sure that if I was the type of person to reserve golf courses, I would be very offended.
Woody tells Chuck,
"Well, here's another fine mess you've gotten us into."
This is a catchphrase associated with the comedy team Laurel and Hardy. The actual quote is, "Here's another nice mess you've gotten me into."
Well, here's another nice mess you've gotten me into.
And they started using it in 1930. Dr. Sandor supplies a few books, including his own, plus Ulysses, a 1922 novel by James Joyce, and The Hardy Boys, a series of mystery novels beginning in 1927.
And I assumed it was also a joke about how if you are not operating on a lot of sleep, Ulysses is not going to be a fun book to read.
Can you imagine being sleep deprived and trying to make your way through James Joyce? That would be torture. The test subjects also watched some movies, including The Pit and the Pendulum, a 1961 horror film directed by Roger Corman and starring Vincent Price.
The shrieking of mutilated victims became the music of his life.
Psycho, a 1960 thriller directed by Alfred Hitchcock. And some Army training films. The U.S. military first started using training films during World War II. Since these short movies were intended for an all-male audience and not shown to the general public, they were sometimes a little raunchier than you might expect, especially the ones dealing with venereal disease.
Imagine being sleep deprived and watching a PSA about sexually transmitted diseases.
They show you the temptations that would lead you into getting VD first. And the reason why they had to stop showing the movies is that the soldiers often said that they would gladly really risk getting VD if they could have sex with these beautiful women as seen in these movies. The sleep study participants play some board games, including Power, where the losing general has to stand trial for war crimes unless he escapes to Argentina. The game is a parody of a real board game called Risk that was released by Hasbro in 1959 and is still made by Hasbro today. The game was created by French filmmaker Albert Lamouris, best known for his short film The Red Balloon. I had no idea that the Red Balloon guy also made Risk.
It's Risk, Jerry, the game of world conquest.
The other game they play is the Happy Lollipop game. This is a parody of Candyland, a board game that goes back to 1949 and has sold over 50 million copies.
This is Candyland, a place you pretend to visit when you play this game.
It was originally published by Milton Bradley, but is currently manufactured by Hasbro. Have you played a lot of Candyland in your life?
As a child, yes. And then it all just kind of faded in the back of my memory. And then I remember as an adult playing it with some kids when I was volunteering at the library. And it was way more boring than I remembered.
And Jack refers to Chuck as Rip Van Winkle. This is a short story from 1819 by Washington Irving. It's about a man who falls asleep for 20 years and misses the entire American Revolution.
Rip Van Winkle, slave, slave, slave.
Appropriately, the story takes place in the Catskills, where Sandy Barron worked as a comedian. Peter, were there any outstanding Garry Marshall fashions in Testing 1-2?
I liked the dress that Jack's assistant was wearing. It's very 1967, very mod style. I wish we could have seen it in color.
Modern dress! What? Your dress is very modern.
I also do like the joke at the beginning about Woody trying to borrow suits from a friend of his who is in a band. The problem is that the suits are very garish and brightly colored, and they say Toon Timers on the back.
I kind of wanted to see those suits, but that would have been costumes that they had to create for this episode.
Yeah, and again, you would not have gotten to see them in color, so.
All the episodes that I could find of Hey Landlord online are in black and white, and I wondered if the show was actually broadcast in black and white. It appears that it was originally broadcast in color, but I think the ones that have gotten saved are in black and white. It must have been in color because it followed the Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. For a while, Walt Disney named the whole show after the fact that it was in color.
The world is a carousel of color.
Peter, did you have any other observations you wanted to make about Testing 1-2?
In the Guinea Pigs remake, Harry Shearer plays the role of Harold, who is less snobby and more just generally quirky. And I love that because it means that we have 2/3 of the cast of This Is Spinal Tap in that episode.
Hello, Cleveland! Hello, Cleveland!
So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this episode any good?
Yeah, I would say that it does kind of end up feeling like a first draft for Guinea Pigs, but for a first draft, it is still very strong. I think that it is for the best that the episode is better known as Guinea Pigs than in this version. If you're only going to watch one, I would say watch Guinea Pigs, but you might as well watch both of them. They're both half-hour sitcoms, so it's not going to take up a ton of your day.
I watched a few episodes of Hey Landlord, and what I would say is that it's perfectly enjoyable, but it is not vital. You wouldn't feel compelled to tune in every week. You wouldn't say, boy, I want to see what Woody and Chuck are doing this week. I can imagine that people would want to tune in to see what Laverne and Shirley were doing every week.
Laverne and Shirley are my friends, and they live inside my head. Woody and Chuck are my landlord and my neighbors. I'm less invested in them.
They seem perfectly nice, but I don't think it would sway me from watching The Ed Sullivan Show. Sandy Barron was interviewed about this, and he said that one of the things that killed the show was being against The Ed Sullivan Show, that the kids who would have been watching Hey Landlord were all watching Sullivan.
I suppose in the 18-year history of our show, we've never had any star who's won such affectionate acceptance as our little Italian mouse, Topo Gigio.
So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow us on thesedaysreours.libsyn.com.
And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysreourspodcast@gmail.com. Now, Peter, what do we have on the docket the next time we get together?
When we talk about important figures in Happy Days, the name Bob Brunner should be very high up there. After all, he created the nickname Fonzie. He created Sit On It. And at the end of the 1970s, he co-created a show called Working Stiffs, starring Jim Belushi and Michael Keaton, and the pilot of which was directed by none other than Penny Marshall.
I've wanted to check out that show for a while, so I'm glad we finally have an opportunity to do it. So, see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
Please open your hearts and your purses to a man who is misunderstood. He gets all the kicks and the curses, though he wishes you nothing but good. Well, he wistfully begs you to show him you think he's a friend, not a louse. So remember the debt that you owe him, the landlord who lends you his house. So pity the downtrodden landlord and his back that is burdened and bent. Respect his gray hairs, don't ask for repairs, and don't be behind with the rent.
Out you two pixies go, through the door or out the window.